You can see the stone. There's a big rock lodged in the hull.
But look at the size of that.
6 months ago, we were at the scene of the Costa Concordia wreck. Captain Jim Fee, an American who has sailed these waters, told us what had to happen.
How bad was the judgment of the captain of the ship who sailed so close by this island?
Completely irresponsible. It's something he has to be severely punished and condemned for.
The ship still lies there as if the tragedy happened yesterday. And for many who were on board, memories of that night of chaos are just as immediate.
We heard a big boom and a violent shifting to port of the ship.
And we looked at each other and simultaneously said, that's not normal.
That's not normal.
The Aho family.
The lights went out a couple times and people just screamed and screamed.
I realized, we needed to get out of here quickly.
At first, the passengers were told the ship had an electrical problem. An hour of confusion passed before the abandoned ship alarm was finally sounded.
They started lowering the lifeboat and it got hung up on the ship.
Everybody was thrown to the other side. We went crashing against the ship.
Nancy and Mario Lafaro.
The lifeboat released and it went into a free fall.
During that free fall and during that time that we were being thrown around, that's the time that I actually felt that we could die.
32 people did die. The captain himself made it ashore, while hundreds of passengers were still stranded on board. In an interview with Italy's Channel 5 this week, Captain Francesco Schettino apologized for what happened, but insisted he committed no crime. Yet Schettino is still under investigation and could face manslaughter charges. But that's not enough for a number of Americans who survived the ordeal and are angry. They blame the parent company, Carnival Corporation of Miami, for caring, they say, more for its $500 million ship than for its passengers. They are convinced that the world's biggest cruise line would like nothing better than to blame their Italian subsidiary and one badly behaved captain.
I think the captain is a coward. I think the captain is a liar. But I also don't feel that the captain operated exclusively in a vacuum.
Nancy and Mario Lafaro have been on a number of cruises.
They really were negligent in handling this, from initially when the accident happened up to now.
Everything made us angry, and everything was outrageous. Everything was absolutely surprisingly ridiculous.
That makes me so angry and so sad.
Brian Aho and his wife Joan Fleeser have taken about a dozen cruises and began taking their daughter Alana along when she was just a baby.
How can you take the responsibilities of people's lives and not have your crew be trained to, protect your customers?
People died because of this for no reason. I mean, that's the tragic thing about this. And he was allowed to do this by the cruise line, by the corporation.
Either they allowed him to divert from his course, or they didn't know where their billion-dollar ship was.
Shortly after the grounding, the Costa Cruise Line made an offer to its inconvenienced passengers.
So Costa contacts you and says, we're prepared to offer you a check for $14,000. What was your reaction when you heard that offer?
Well, my first reaction was that I thought it was grossly insulting. But what upset us most is that it almost seemed like they wanted to do this very quickly and get it done so that it could all go away. And that's the part that we have a problem with. It would be very easy for us to just sign. They promised payment within 2 weeks. We would have had $29,000 between us in 2 weeks. Great. That's not what it's about. This particular incident should not be forgotten, and good should come from it somehow.
Neither family had a clue that when they bought their tickets, they were agreeing the cruise line would have very limited legal liability.
All right, so now we've gone to the Costa website.
Mark Byrne is an attorney for a number of Costa Concordia passengers, and he showed us that getting access to the terms of agreement for a cruise ship ticket is its own adventure.
And go down to the general conditions.
Right.
Even though it says general conditions, it's not anywhere. You go down, and it says additional limitations of liability. the passage ticket contract contains further limitations of liability.
Right.
But it doesn't tell you what those are. But it does tell you that guests may request a copy of the passage ticket contract by calling 1-800-GO-COSTA. And just out of curiosity, we did that. And they tell you that we'll send it to you after you've booked and after you've paid.
So let me get this straight. So in order to find out what the actual terms and conditions are, I have to accept, not only buy my ticket, but accept the terms of agreement in order to find out what the terms of agreement actually are.
Correct.
So if you want to fight it, you've got to take your claim to Italian court.
Yeah. You have to pay an Italian lawyer. It's going to be 8 to 10 years before you get a verdict.
John Arthur Eaves Jr. represents more than 100 Costa Concordia clients, including the Aho family.
If one of my loved ones gets killed in an airplane crash, a commercial airliner in the United States, typically what's the settlement from the airline company?
Well, usually from $2 to $5 million.
$2 to $5 million.
Yes.
Costa Concordia, according to the fine print on that ticket, what are the lives of the people who died? What are they worth?
Only $75,000.
Cruise ships are registered in foreign countries, which provide enormous tax advantages to the owners. That also puts the ships outside U.S. jurisdiction once they're a few miles offshore.
Once you step on board that, you have entered a new nation. I call it the nation of Carnival. And the only people that are responsible then for you is Carnival.
What we have learned is a totally different world out there as far as your rights are concerned.
The cruise industry is a large industry, employs a lot of people, and they have a lot of sway in Washington.
Are the laws on the side of the cruise industry?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that's made this case such a challenge to pursue, is because the law is against us. But I think that we have a window of opportunity when people are focused on what happened, what went wrong on the Costa Concordia.
Eaves is anything but an orthodox trial lawyer. He comes from a seventh-generation Mississippi family and bills himself as a crusader for justice. His office is adorned with armor, knights on horseback, and the Bible.
That you're supposed to take care of those people who've been done grave injustice, take up for the poor.
A former Democratic candidate for governor, Eaves has battled in Congress and the Italian courts. 3 months ago, Eaves got the federal court in Texas to send U.S. Marshals to seize the Carnival Triumph, which was about to sail from the port of Galveston. He brought along a camera crew to document the event.
We're here to execute a court order.
The court accepted his suit on behalf of the family of a woman killed on the Costa Concordia, thus compelling Carnival to post a $10 million bond before the Triumph could sail.
Now, this is done very often with merchant ships and other types of ships, but to my knowledge, it's the first time in U.S. law that a cruise ship has been seized.
Called it a long shot or a stunt, but Eaves is bent on forcing his cases into U.S. courts and into the lap of the Carnival Corporation, which had more than $15 billion in revenue last year.
We wanted to do this because we wanted the American public to be aware that the same inadequate standards that were on the Costa Concordia, the same training, the same captain discipline on the Costa Concordia, is the same lack of standards on every Carnival cruise ship that floats.
Citing pending litigation, Carnival declined our request for an interview, but maritime lawyers agree that Carnival is complying with existing laws.
Some people just don't want to have anything more to do with it, and I completely understand that. All the trauma, you just want to get past it and continue on. And, we, on the other hand, think that it's important to try to change something.
There's a lack of oversight, and I think through legislation is the only way that's going to be addressed.
Just, if you don't mind, what are you thinking about right now? I mean, the tears are flowing. What are your feelings?
I was thinking about the people that died. And we seriously want to help change things so, something this senseless won't happen again.